Good afternoon, grades 3rd and 4th. Today we're doing Read Along with Miss Kelly. We're reading chapters 7 and 8 of Attack of the Shark-Headed Zombie. So we're starting with chapter 7, The Bookworms. The cousins rolled through the doorway across the room's hard floor and banged to a stop against a bookshelf. Once again, Keats and Henry found themselves lying on their backs, trying to catch their breath. "Where are we?" Henry asked. "Sitting up," Keats said. "Up." Too. Luckily, he had managed to hold on to the wine. He looked around the room. Bookshelves climbed up the high walls, weird railings that looked like thick tubes wove in and out of the shelves. "It's a library," Keats said. He was still a little dizzy from all the tumbling. Henry looked pretty unhappy. "Well, I'm glad we're in one of your favorite places," he said, "because we're trapped." It was true. The door to the hallway had become a wall after they fell through it, and there wasn't a single door or window in the room. Keats felt lousy. "I'm sorry, Henry. We were so close to the attic and getting the light bulb. I just couldn't keep my balance." Henry gave him a smile. "Hey, don't worry about it, Keats," he said. "I wanted a tour of the house anyway." Keats smiled too, then thought of something. "In books," he said, "libraries and creepy houses always have secret passages." Henry frowned. "Secret passages?" "Sure, hidden doorways," Keats said. "We just have to pull on the right book, and I bet a way will open up." "There are thousands of books in here," Henry said, "but it can't hurt to try." The cousins got to their feet. They started sliding books on and off the nearest shelf. Nothing happened. Maybe one of the books on the higher shelf would do the trick. Keats climbed up onto one of the wide railings. It was a little soft, but held his weight. Keats pulled on a book after book. Still no sign of a secret door. Suddenly, the railing he was standing on started to move. It twisted and turned under his feet. Keats dropped the book in his hand. He jumped down to the floor. "Was that an earthquake?" Keats asked. "More like an earthworm," Henry said. "A giant one." He pointed to what Keats had thought was a railing. The thick tube was sliding around with squishy glopping sounds. "That's not an earthworm. It's a giant bookworm," Keats cried. As if to prove Keats right, the worm pulled his head out of a nearby book. It didn't have eyes or ears, but its mouth was as wide as a watermelon. The worm chomped down on another book. It tore off parts of the cover and chewed slowly, like a cow with a mouthful of grass. Keats looked around the library again. There are at least 6 giant bookworms tunneling through the books. Each one was as long as a minivan. They must have gone still when the boys burst into the room, but now they seemed to realize the cousins weren't a threat and went back to eating. And as they ate, they made gassy sounds like glop, slop. "Oh man," Keith said. He pinched his nose. "That's totally disgusting," Henry agreed. "They don't look dangerous unless they want to stink us to death." Keats started to pull back the book he dropped. Then he noticed the title, "Spells. No wine needed." He read out loud. "Great," Henry said. He took the book and flipped to the middle. "Let's try one. It could help us to get out of here. This spell sounds good. It's called Excellent Idea." "Wait a second," Keith said. "We shouldn't mess around with this stuff." But it was too late. Henry was already reading the spell. "Put the cluck right up there or the yolk will hit our hair." Blip. A living chicken plopped into the air in the middle of the library. It was about 6 feet off the ground. It clucked and laid an egg. Henry stuck out his hand and caught the egg before it hit the ground. Flapping his wings, the chicken fluttered to the floor. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Henry asked. "I just made a chicken appear out of thin air. How cool is that?" The chicken started strutting around the library, pecking the floor. It clucked again. Then with a blip, the chicken vanished. Keats took the egg from Henry. "Well, when we want an omelet, we'll know what to do. But how is that spell going to help us against the zombie?" Okay, you're right, Henry said. Let's find another one. Before they could look for a more useful spell, thunk, crash. Keats dropped the egg in surprise. It smashed on the floor. What was that sound? He asked. That was the sound of a hole being made in the kitchen wall, Henry said. You know what that means? For a second, Keats couldn't talk. He knew exactly what that sound meant. The shark-headed zombie was inside the house. Chapter 8, Escape from the Library. Through the walls, Keats heard the zombie banging around the kitchen, pots and pans clattering, glasses shattering. Then there was a huge wham that made him jump. Keats figured it was the refrigerator being tipped over. Henry and Keats looked at each other with wide eyes until this moment they had felt safe from the zombie. But now it was inside the house with them. Henry finally said, if the zombie breaks through the wall and gets in here, we'll be sitting ducks. Keats finished the sentence for him. We have to get out of this library. Henry nodded. But how? There was just that one door and it's gone. Keats slid a few books off a nearby shelf. We tried that, Keats, Henry said, and a little sharply. Yanking on books isn't going to open a secret passage. I have a new idea, Keats said. He pulled out another book. This one had been half eaten by the worms. The cover was ripped off. The pages inside were shredded. Keats grabbed a handful of torn pages. He waved them at one of the nearest worms. What are you doing? Henry asked. Keats didn't answer. He dangled the pages like bait. Then he started talking to the worm. Delicious book juice, he crooned. Henry chuckled. If you're looking for the worm's face, you're at the wrong end. Henry blushed. He went out to the other end of the worm, which was half buried in the book. Keats shook the torn pages in the air again. The worm pulled its head out of the book and sniffed the air. It smelled the pages. Then Keats rubbed them on the wall next to the worm. Come on and get it, wormy. Keats said softly, glop. With yet another gassy sound, the worm wiggled to the wall. Its mouth opened wide. The worm took a huge bite out of the wall, right where Keats had rubbed the pages. Instantly, the worm's whole body shook. It spit out the pieces of the wall on the floor. Plaster, wood, and few chewed pages dribbled out of his mouth. Keats could imagine the worm thinking, gross. Henry said, I bet that's how it looks when I eat my mother's tuna surprise. Pretty much, Keats agreed with a laugh. The worm slithered higher up the bookshelf to find a better meal, and the boys were looking like a pile of bookworm vomit and a hole in the wall. The hole wasn't big, but the boys could squeeze through it and get out of the library. Henry clapped Keats on the back. Great job, cuz, Henry said, and sorry I did it again. I doubt that you find something in the book to help us. Keats said, no big deal, Henry. Without waiting another second, the boys crawled over what the worm had thrown out and went into the hole together. 3 words on a scrap of paper caught Keats' eye. Zap the zombie. He plucked it out of the gunk and kept going. Once they were through, the hole closed up behind them, just like the doorway, but it didn't matter. They were back in the hall. Careful to avoid faces in the carpet, they got to their feet. Keith wiped the scrap of paper on his pants. Look, the worm must be the one who took a bite out of How to Zap Anything book. There is a missing part of this. This is the missing part of the spell. Keats held the scrap next to the page from the book in the kitchen. Like 2 puzzle pieces, they fit perfectly. For step 3, we say pause the snapping jaws and zap the zombie as is who was. We have the rest of the spell, Henry said, asked. Right, Keats said, but we still need things like that. That's my baby, she won't.